Hey YouTube people, Cameron here with the Seabutters Tech channel, and today we're looking at 4 different mobile external GPUs at wildly different price point and feature sets. These all have different GPU silicone inside of each of them, and if you're looking at this lineup, there may be some you recognize, there may be some you don't. You may be thinking, why is this one red and what the heck are these black ones? Well, let's go through the lineup. But full disclosure first, I do sell the enclosures so you can build your own external GPU solutions as seen in the Bantam Long and the original Bantam. The first one up here is the Bantam Long. This one is meant to be, very inexpensive to get into an eGPU. This one is $537 to assemble this kit. It has a 4060 with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. This one right here is the GPD G1. It has a 7600M XT in it. Very popular option. Many of you will recognize this one. Right here we have the ONEXPLAYER OneXGPU2. And what you'll notice with this one, and what you're probably saying to yourself is, why is this red? Well, it is the special edition Evangelion Ava Unit 02 version of it, and it has some pretty cool styling. I thought it was pretty neat. So anyways, that's why this one looks red, but it is exactly the same as a normal OneXGPU2 with the 7800M with 12 gigabytes of VRAM. And last but not least, this is the original Bantam, and this one right here is configured with an RTX 4000 SFF Ada edition with 20 gigabytes of RAM. Now, what are we going to do here today? Well, we're going to compare and contrast all these in terms of performance, efficiency, comfort and noise, and ease of use and options, because they all kind of wildly vary in what they're capable of doing. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the performance of all of these side by side. Now, there's some of these parameters that you can have with eGPU, so I want to make it clear how I'm doing these tests. It'll be done using the Ryzen AI HX 370 at 30 watts, DDR5 at 7500 megahertz. All of the eGPUs will be connected via their Oculink connections, and the internal display will be used. Okay, first thing we're going to look at is Time Spy, and going all the way from the GPD G1 up from the Bantam Long to the Bantam to the 7800M on the OneXGPU2. You can see that Time Spy score scaling up. And you may be wondering, if you're paying attention, some of the Time Spy numbers that maybe have been advertised by OneX is a little higher than this. That is because we're using the internal monitor. If I would have used an external monitor, that score would have been a little bit higher, but I tend to kind of use, I'm reporting this how I use my device pretty much, and I generally don't use an external monitor with my eGPU. It's to enhance my existing devices. Occasionally I'll use an external monitor, but this is the internal monitor score. So that's the scaling on Time Spy. Let's move forward to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And you can see here the GPD G1 in this 1080p high test gets a 106 in its low power mode and 120 its high power mode. The Bantam Long scores a 134, and the OneXGPU2 in both its efficiency mode and its high power mode, really not a huge difference here, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But what I saw is it's almost like the efficiency mode changes the fan curve more than anything else, make it a little bit quieter. It does reduce the watts, but it's still using a lot of power, which we'll see here in a minute. But those scores don't scale super high at this end of things, but still a really great score. So far, the OneXGPU2 has either been the highest or scored the highest on all of these tests, but here's the Bantam also getting the exact same score. We'll look at efficiency in a minute here, though. Final Fantasy benchmark 1080p. The GPD G1 in efficiency mode got a 9745 and 11,822 when it's given its full power. The Bantam Long scores a 12,391, and the 7800M in efficiency mode gets a 12721 and then scales to 13122. We're seeing again that high power mode doesn't gain a ton of frames. And then the Bantam with the RTX 4000 SFF scoring a really nice 15,084. Let's move on. We're going to actually discuss a little bit of VR, which isn't commonly done in reviews, but I thought this would be interesting to do. VR chat 2.4K per eye, uncapped frames per second, 46 frames per second with the GPD G1, scaling to 56 once you give it a little more power, up to 135 watts. The 7800M got 66 and 70, while the Bantam Long scored an impressive 76 frames per second, and the Bantam RTX 4000 got 90. Okay, so we've seen some of the performance numbers, but now let's look at the efficiency. So in that time spy score that we looked earlier, we can see that the OneXGPU2 in its high power mode used 230 watts to achieve its 15,112 score. So it got 65.7 points per watt. Next in line was the GPD G1 in its high power mode, which used 133.9 watts to get an 8,878 score, which meant it got 66.3 points per watt. Now, bumping it into its efficiency mode does improve efficiency quite a bit. It jumps from 65.7 points per watt up to 73.99 on the OneXGPU2. However, the NVIDIA GPUs seem to do a lot more with less power. So the Bantam Long used 135 watts and got a 10,329 time spy score, which gave it an efficiency score of 76.51. This is kind of a really cool one right here. So that G1 in its efficiency mode actually is very efficient. Look at this. It scored a 7187, but it only used 79.4 watts to do it, giving it 90.5 points per watt. And we'll see a common theme through here. The king of efficiency is that RTX 4000 SFF in the Bantam, which scored 12,655, but only used 133 watts to do it, making its efficiency score, the top one, 94.51. Let's look at that Shadow of the Tomb Raider efficiency score. And in this one, since it's scored in watts rather than points, we'll be talking frames per watt. So that OneXGPU2 got a 142 frames per second average using 180 watts to do it. That gives it 0.789 frames per watt. Then we have the G1 in its high power mode using 133 watts to get us 120 frames per second, which translates to 0.902 frames per watt. In the efficiency mode, the OneXGPU2 ended up scoring 139 frames per second, only using now 150 watts of power, which improved its efficiency score quite a bit from 0.78 to 0.927. The Bantam Long used 130 watts to score a 134 average frames per second, giving it roughly 1 frame per 1 watt of energy. Going to the RTX 4000 SFF on the Bantam, it scored 142 using only 110 watts, which gave it a 1.29 frames per watt score. But another surprise winner here is the GPD G1 in its efficiency mode, which was able to score a 106 frames per second using only 79 watts, giving it the highest score here, 1.342 in efficiency. So pretty interesting to see here. Let's keep moving. VR chat. This test basically caps the frame rate at 45 frames per second to do reprojection up to 90 frames per second. But it's a trick. But what it really does is renders at 45 and then upscales. I wanted to see how many watts each GPU used to do this. So with a 45 frames per second cap, this is how many watts it used. So the Bantam only used 77 watts to keep and maintain a 45 frames per second cap. The G1, it's in efficiency mode, about 80. The Bantam Long used 90 watts of power to maintain 45. The G1 in high power mode, for some reason, wanted to still suck a lot of power, so it used 110 watts to maintain that 45 frames per second cap. I feel like there's some optimization that AMD could do here to, if it's weird that you would have a capped frame rate and you would see that it would continue to use more watts when it could do the same thing using 80, but it is what it is. These were the numbers that I viewed in testing. In efficiency mode, to maintain a 45 cap, the 7800M in this application still used a whole lot of power, 140 watts, and 150 watts in its high power mode. So using a lot more energy to just maintain 45 frames per second in this test. Now, I also tested uncapped efficiency. This is the same number you saw when we were looking at performance. So to get 70 frames per second in this test, 2.4K per eye, it used 150 watts here, which meant it got 0.318 frames per watt. And then in its efficiency mode, it used 140 watts to get 66 frames per second. The G1 in its high power mode used 110 watts to get 56 frames per second. And the GPD G1 used 80 watts to score 46 frames per second, which meant it was quite efficient, but the frame rate was one of the lowest, well, it was the lowest on the test here, but used a lot less power to get it. The Bantam Long was the next one in efficiency, scoring a 0.612 frames per watt. It used 90 watts to get 76 frames per second. And the efficiency king in this test was the RTX 4000 SFF, which was able to maintain 90 frames per second in this test using only 77 watts. So we got the highest score with the least amount of watts here, which was pretty cool.
All right, so now we got to talk about the comfort and ease of use with all of these devices. Now, the first thing I need to point out as a distinction is the fact that both the GPD G1 and the OneXGPU2 serve as docking stations of sort with USB, SD card readers, and even ports where you can put NVMe drives. So these provide additional value on top of the purely graphical solution. This is something that the Bantam options do not provide. They are purely video devices, which for me, that's all I really want them for. I don't usually use them as docking stations personally, but for some of you, that's a key distinction. But let's go through the noise and comfort of all of these devices. So I will say I have to hand it to the GPD G1 because it has its AC adapter built into the device, and which means all you need to carry is a single power cord like this, which makes this setup very easy and comfortable to carry around. That combined with the noise profile in the balance mode, it is very quiet on balance mode. It is not the quietest out of all of these, but it is the second quietest. The quietest is probably the SFF 4000, which is very quiet. That workstation card just is not loud at all. And so this definitely wins ease of use in terms of carrying and being very quiet. Now, when you bump this up into high power mode, it can get quite noisy. So that is, but it's nice that you have both options. This is a good device, very compact and easy to carry around. Very comfortable device. The Bantam Long is a little bit larger. You can see it's about the same size as the GPD G1. It's a little bit smaller in terms of its profile, but width it's a little bit fatter. Obviously, it's got that desktop GPU card in it. But still very easy and comfortable to carry around. It's actually fairly light versus other desktop eGPU solutions. It is one of the smallest things out there. So very comfortable. In terms of the noise profile on this is a 3-fan. They're kind of small fans, but it is also very quiet. So definitely quite comfortable. One of the downsides of the Bantam is you do need to carry around an AC adapter, which means your setup would look something like this to carry around. So a little bit more bulk, but definitely bang for the buck is there. Let's talk about the ONEXPLAYER GPU2. Its AC adapter looks like this, a tiny bit more integrated. It does push a lot of power, so your setup for carrying this would look about like this. This is a hefty boy. It is quite large. You're seeing the difference. I was actually hoping it'd be a little more portable. This to me feels like a docking station that you're gonna keep put somewhere rather than a mobile thing to carry around, because it is so large and you do have this AC adapter with it. The other downfall of using this device is you cannot put it on its side. You could if you got a stand or something, but then you're carrying one more thing, but this cannot go on its side. You will block the vents if you try to put it on its side, where the GPD G1 can be on its side. It can be like this. So it has a little more options, and the Bantams, you can put it like this, you can put it like this, you can put it like this, you can put it however you want, and it's still gonna perform for you. It's a very versatile in terms of positioning, where this is just, you know, you'll scratch it up for one if you try to put it on its side, so it has to constantly be in this position, which is a downfall. It is also very noisy, and this was definitely the noisiest one of these eGPUs, but it also is pushing the most amount of power and has some performance to back it up. Even the balance mode that you can turn on using this button here made it a little bit quieter. But at the same time, did not make it nearly as quiet as, I mean, you could tell a difference, but it wasn't as drastic as what you see on the GPD G1, where you put this in balance mode, it is super quiet. I would have preferred to see this downclocked way more than what it is in its balance mode, because in its balance mode, it was still at times going up to 160 watts, 170 watts. It went between 120 to 170 in Final Fantasy when I was monitoring it, where in the high powered mode, it would go between 120 and 230. This thing would pull a lot of power. So there was a lot of fluctuation as well. This claims, you know, a 180 watt mode and a 135 watt mode, but what I was seeing was a 160 watt mode and a 180 watt mode that would burst into the 200s sometimes. So this is using a lot of power, but it ends up being quite noisy. And I wish they had an even lower powered setting on it, which would make it a lot easier to use. So we'll talk about that in the wrap up, but that was an issue with comfort for this device, the way you can position it and the noisiness of the fan. Now let's talk about the original Bantam with that SFF workstation card. Again, this can be placed in many different positions. You know, your sky's the limit pretty much, except you wouldn't want to block that fan this way. So you have one face you wouldn't want to put this on. It is quite easy to carry around. It is low profile. You can see it has the smallest profile of all of these eGPUs, other than the thickness. It's slightly thicker than these two, but it is super easy to carry around. But also you are going to be carrying something like this, an AC adapter, which isn't a huge deal, but still it is a distinction. So if I had to rate the fan noise on all of these, this is the quietest card. And then next would be the GPD G1 in its low power mode, which is about tied with the 4060 in general. Then it would be this in its high power mode is about the same as this in its balanced mode. And then the noisiest of all is this in its performance.
All right, we have to have a value conversation as well. And I think the fairest way to do this is talk it through based on the time spy score versus the dollar amount spent for the eGPU setup. So you can see we have the lowest value on the left-hand side up to the highest value. So per dollar spent, every dollar got you 7.9 points in time spy with this one. This is the most expensive, least amount of value for the money. The G1 in efficiency mode is also only gets you 12 points per watt. Sorry, 12 points per dollar spent. The 7800M in its efficiency mode gives you a little more value, 12.9 points per dollar spent. And the G1 in its regular mode gets you 14.79 points per dollar spent. And the 7800M gets you 15.11. You can almost see that they kind of like, I think, I don't know, when you're pitting products against each other and value per dollar spent, it's interesting that these two are neck and neck, which means while this is faster, you spend more money for it. But the value king on this list is the 4060 LP Bantam Long. You get 19.23 points per dollar spent, which makes it a really good value setup.
So we've examined all of these Oculink capable external GPUs, and I kind of want to give like category winner awards to each of them because they each would fit a different person in a different way. First of all, like for comfort and ease of use, this GPD G1 is a really great device, super compact, easy to carry around. And for that, for the type of person who just wants a really minimal setup, needs a little boost in power, this is a great machine, especially if you need that docking station capability on the go. The Bantam Long is a great bang for your buck. You get very high performance, in some instances very close to these two higher end devices for the least amount of money. So if you're on a budget, this is a great option. You know, you can get into this for $537 with for all the parts and then assembly, and it really is a great bang for your buck winner here. The ONEXPLAYER OneXGPU2 is great for the person who wants the docking station with everything, but can put it kind of out of the way and have it do everything you need. I would say this is a less mobile situation, but if you're a person that this is going to be your only computer, this would be a great thing to hook up to a couple monitors and be able to plug in and get really great performance out of. Just being aware that it could get a little bit noisy. But this is, you know, kitchen sink thrown in, and for the price, you're getting the same performance as this. And close to the same performance, not the same efficiency. The original Bantam is the workstation class GPU on the go for the professional. You're able to put 20 gigabytes of RAM like almost in your pocket and carry it on the go with you. That makes this thing very compelling for a professional. If you want to use an RTX 4000 card on the go and have the need for it, the efficiency and the power that you get in this thing are amazing. And for that, this is the efficient but pro option, because it is quite expensive to get into this. However, you can see the performance and efficiency kind of speaks for itself, but the value proposition is probably not there for most people, which is why, you know, I came out with this one as a lower tier, lower cost option that gets you probably 85 to 90%, 85% of the way to the performance of this one if you don't have high memory needs and things like that. So anyways, what do you think about all of these eGPUs? Which one would you rather have? And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you in the comments.